Hello, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, THI publisher Andrew Jones. And Andrew here for yet another episode of our UNC football ISO series. We've been running these out the whole off season. So if you haven't seen those or the basketball ones we've been doing, after this video is done, you can click our channel and you can find a playlist with all of those videos included in it. Yeah, maybe take a few hours out, maybe driving around town, sit back and listen to some of these ISO series. We got some video and photo in there as well in a lot of these. So if you want to get a little bit of an insight and some shots of what was going on in spring practice at the few we were able to be at and the spring game, definitely check those out. Some really cool
let me jump in. If anybody actually drives around listening to these ISO podcasts, send me a note. And if I believe you, I may give you a comp sub to THI.
Yeah, man, I need that. I love that. If
you're not a subscriber and you're driving around listening to us, you need to be on our site. So send it to me. Let me know.
Exactly.
Now, if I got like 50 of them, I'm giving out 50 comps. I'll give out one.
You're only giving out one, so act fast.
I'm serious. I'll give out one comp to someone who actually could prove that they do that.
I love that. I love that. Act fast. If you want to
videotape. Yeah. You're not going to videotape yourself driving around doing it. Just be convincing.
Yeah, be creative with it, be convincing. You can find us on Twitter if you want to tag us in a tweet or something like that, showing that you've been listening to us on the road. We'd love that.
There's ways to find me. There's ways to find me. It's not
exactly.
Hard.
And
I don't hide.
And as always, like we've already talked about with that premium subscription, we'll comp you that if you do that. But if you haven't signed up, if you don't listen to us driving around town, you can sign up for just $8.33 a month. It's a great time to do it too with all the recruiting stuff going on, and obviously ahead of the head of football fall camp starting in August and the season starting in September. So if you want a little bit more background on recruiting, scoops, a little more insight to exactly what's going on with Carolina football, basketball, and recruiting, sign up for our premium message boards for just $8.33 a month. You can find a link to our website below. But as you guys know by the title, we're here to talk about Garrett Walston in this video. Going to go ahead and kind of dive into some of his stats from last year, and then we'll obviously dive into him a little bit deeper. 12 appeared in 12 games for the Tar Heels, 11 starts at the tight end position, had 19 catches for 255 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also scored Carolina's first touchdown of last season in that game against Syracuse, which was an 11-yard reception, which I for some reason remember that one fondly. I don't know why. Out of all the touchdowns last year, I definitely remember that one sticking out.
Let me jump in again, as I'm in interrupting mood today.
You're good, man. You're good.
Because somebody scored a touchdown in Kenan Stadium, and it wasn't a peep. It wasn't a sound.
That's a good point. That's exactly what it was.
His touchdown. I remember it very well, too, because it's one of the most surreal moments of my career. Mm-hmm. But that was the weirdest game. We started getting a little bit used to it. At BC was pretty weird, being there with literally, not only was there nobody inside the stadium, like 20 people outside the stadium.
Oh, I can imagine, yeah.
There were a couple of kids playing Frisbee. It was a little park right across the street from the stadium at BC. There were some kids throwing the Frisbee around, wearing masks. And because this is back in the 1st of October. Yeah, so when Garrett scored that touchdown against Syracuse, that was so bizarre. He scored, and there's no noise.
Yeah, nothing. Crickets. You can hear a pin drop in the stadium.
It was weirder than, even spring games, like this year's spring game, you have a lot of people there because of raining and stuff. 1,000 times weirder than that. So Garrett Walston's first touchdown last season will be very memorable for that weird reason.
Yeah, I think that's why it stood out in my memory so much as well. But kind of diving in further to Garrett, I thought we've talked about him a little bit kind of throughout the spring, because I think Sam came out one day and said you'd like to target Garrett a little bit more. And I think the reason going into next season, I should say, and I think the reason for that in the past has been, I think they've just had to rely on him as a run and pass blocker a lot when it comes down to that. But when you consider that Carolina is returning all of its starters on the O-line, they've got a little more experience back at, obviously lost a couple good wide receivers, but they got some wide receivers in that room who can block. I think one of the goals for Carolina going into next season, like Sam said, is to target Garrett and get him a little bit more involved in the passing game. I mean, 19 catches for 255 yards and 2 touchdowns isn't bad. But when you've got a guy as talented as Garrett Walston is, I think we can all agree with, I think he's got the potential to be especially look at Jake Vargas, who did it a couple years ago. I think Garrett's got all the potential in the world to be a tight end at the NFL level. And I think targeting him a little bit more will only help benefit this offense as a whole. So let's kind of start with this, AJ. What are your overall thoughts of, he's really let me preface this real quick too. He is a true super senior on this team, a guy that decided to come back for his last year at Carolina with the eligibility rules with COVID. But what are your kind of overall thoughts of, maybe not going back to when he got here, but last season as a whole, and looking back at the spring, just kind of your overall thoughts on Garrett's, performances and game as a whole?
Well, let me first start out by saying he's a classic true super senior. Mm-hmm. And that's what we will call him during the year. That's what they refer to him as. And he came back for two reasons. One, because he wants to be an NFL guy. And John Lilly has a history of producing some NFL guys. And he's also been in the NFL, so he knows what it takes. Jake Vargas is a very good friend of Garrett's, and he was with the Vikings last year. He was playing like an H-back, fullback type position, which I think Garrett is capable of doing at the next level. And Jake told him, hey, you could be an NFL guy, go work on a couple of these things. The other reason is Garrett wants to win something significant. He believes that this year, this program can achieve something very, very significant, and he wants to be a part of that. So going back to how his game has grown, he's a pretty good blocker. He's a better run blocker than a pass blocker, which is kind of the storyline for all the guys that put a hand on the ground on the offense, because they were inconsistent with pass protection last year. And that has been one of the stated missions of the spring, and now here in the offseason, is to get better at protecting Sam. Garrett last year actually had 6 games where he graded out 70 or higher on PFF with his pass protection, but the times he didn't, he was well below that. So consistency is a key for him. Now, he graded out 65.7 by PFF with his run blocking for the season. It's pretty solid there. I think the NFL will be intrigued by his ability to run block and his ability to catch passes. If you're going to be a tight end, you got to run a route, you got to catch a pass. Garrett can do that. Mm-hmm. Garrett can catch the ball, those little slants over the middle, and he can turn his nose upfield and move a little bit. He's got some athletic ability, and I think that they would like to use more of that, especially if the wide receiver core maybe isn't as productive early on as some would hope that they would be, or maybe it's just part of the plan. Last year, they needed him to pass block, so the line has to do a better job. One of the question marks about the running back position is, how are those guys going to help with pass block? If Caleb Hood's on the field a lot, is he ready to regularly contribute in that element of the game? Ty Chandler, one of the reasons he intrigued the staff to come over from Tennessee as a transfer was because he has pass blocked a lot at the major college level there in the SEC. So they know that they have a guy who can handle that. They'd like to do a little bit less of it with Garrett. They'd like to release him. He was only targeted 24 times last year. Now, 24 targets with 90 catches is pretty good. 24 targets, 255 yards, that's a pretty good number for a tight end. That's more than 10 yards a target. You'll take that from your tight end all the time, and you'll run with it. So I think that they will use him more in the passing game, but they need the pass protection to be better. You need to allow him to release a little bit more than he did last year, and I think it'll make Carolina better. And they might be, if the running game isn't what it was a year ago, and the expectations are that it won't be, and maybe there's some struggles there, you can use that little tight end stuff to kind of help pound your way down the field.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And do you think the way Garrett's utilized this coming season is like going to be a strong indicator of kind of the I think you've already touched on a little bit, but the trust and the ability that the running backs have of blocking, or maybe the trust and the ability they have in the O-line? Do you think he's kind of that a reference point almost for that?
Yeah, but also it just depends on how they use the running backs in the passing game as receivers as well. Michael got a lot better at that. Javonte had like 26 catches or something last year.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it depends on how they use the running backs in the passing game. A lot of it will be situational. There might be some games where Garrett's targeted once. And there might be some games where he's targeted 8 or 9 times. I think a lot of it's going to be situational. And I think that's the value in having an older guy like Garrett Walston there, is because he's been through so much. He's seen so much. He's a smart guy. So, he's not going to worry about whether the targets are going to be there or not. He's going to do whatever they need him to do based on whatever kind of defense they're going up against, what the schemes are, what the defensive strengths are. And I think that Garrett is the kind of player that could take advantage of some defensive weaknesses if they are in that area of covering a tight end. That's why you might see some big games from him one week, and maybe you won't really see him much in the stat sheet the next week, because because of the situational aspect of it. But I also think, though, to what you're asking specifically about the running backs blocking, it appears that Ty Chandler can do that. And they said, Max said, Ty can block. That's one of the reasons we were interested in him. So you go back and look at some of the Tennessee stuff, and we've talked to people that cover Tennessee, they said he was pretty solid in that area.
Mm.
It depends on if DJ Jones and Caleb Hood and some of the other guys, depending on what the rotation shakedown is at running back, how well they protect too. But you got a weapon like Garrett. I think you got to use him. He has those touchdowns. He also has two-point conversions in his career. Those are tight, short, get open, be physical, get in front of the defender, either a DB or a hybrid type guy or a linebacker, and make a physical catch in the end zone. Those are what 2-point conversions are, and he's done that. Mm-hmm. So I would like to see him use more. I'm a big fan of using tight ends, and I think we'll see him more used more.
Definitely. And even, looking at his stats from the Orange Bowl, 4 catches for 32 yards. Targeted 4 times in a game towards the end of the season when, you had with the guys that opted out, you had the kind of offenses you're going to see this year, basically, barring a few true freshmen that have come in. So if that's any indication, if he's getting targeted 4 or 5 times a game, yeah.
That's a good point. And, he can catch the ball on the run. And the tight ends are different now. Some people still have this mindset about what a tight end is. And Carolina's had some pretty good tight ends in the past. One's still in the NFL, Mr. Ebron. Mm-hmm. He's pretty good at getting the ball downfield. Garrett can get downfield a little bit. So it would not surprise me to see him have a couple of, explosive plays this year. Mm-hmm. More than
definitely. And kind of goes without saying, but probably one of the most shoot-in starters on this team as well on both sides of the ball, yeah.
They got a lot of offense.
Yeah, they definitely have a lot on offense. So, yeah, I think number one takeaway from this is it'll just be interesting to see how he's utilized. They've talked about using him more in the pass game. Sam's come out and said, I want to use him more in the pass game. Let's see if it actually happens or not, depending on, how that running back position and how other things shake out. But just having a guy like him, not only just on the field, but in that tight end room, that's got to be so valuable for some of those younger guys in there. And you got a guy like Kamari Morales who's right behind him who's proven he can do it too. So I think it's safe to say that tight end position is about as secure as it gets.
Pretty loaded. It's pretty good. That's a loaded room with a ton of potential.
Yeah, and just I think some of the younger guys, Kendall Carr, Copenhagen are going to continue to learn and develop, and they'll get their shot down the line. And having a guy like Garrett Walston been there, done that, who's definitely got the potential to play in the NFL next year is big time. So not only is he good for this year's team, but I think Garrett Walston's a huge contributor for the future of that tight end room and the future of the program as well. So yeah, I think it's a good place to wrap this one up, AJ. Looking forward to seeing how Garrett Walston is utilized in this offense, and maybe we'll see him with instead of 19 catches, maybe we'll see that doubled, maybe tripled. Who knows, right? Triple might be a little bit too much.
I think he'll be in the 30s.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
30-something catches, 400-something yards, 4 TDs.
That'd be a good.
I think that we could maybe start there. Mm-hmm. I think his stats will certainly improve.
Definitely. I think
and the targets, 24 targets, I could see in the 40 range.
Yeah, I think ideally that would be great, especially when you look at some of the guys they lost in the receiver room, like we talked about. You don't got a guy like Diami and Daz over there. There's going to be guys that have to step up. There's plenty of opportunities for guys to go out there and make plays. And Garrett Walston is one of the most experienced guys, not only in the tight end room, but in the wide receiver core as a whole and the offense as a whole. So, you got him. Why not utilize him a little bit more? But I think it's a good place to wrap this one up, AJ, this edition of the UNC Football ISO series. Make sure you go check out those and the basketball videos we've been doing. If you haven't already, playlist is on the front of our channel, and head on over to TarLillustrated.com. And guys, don't forget, we're all, AJ's over here offering you. We're giving you 1 comp sub if you can prove that you do listen to us on the road. Even I do it sometimes, AJ. Even I like to listen to you and David's podcast. Don't listen to myself too often, but you and David, you and Dean, I like to clue on this.
Full disclosure, when I was in radio, I used to tape every show. And I told you I did like in Wilmington. I actually taped it on a boombox in my car because I wanted to play it back and hear the way other people heard it. And I would take notes. I still got my notebooks, my early radio days. All the notes I took. With our podcast, I do eventually listen to them and I do critique. And I
critique for sure.
I'm so busy sometimes. I just don't have time. I might listen to them on my walks sometimes.
I do that too.
I gotta go get my steps in and stuff like that. But a lot of times I just want to get away from it. So if you guys are listening to it driving around the car, that's something that I generally don't do.
Yeah.
So prove it to me. And there's a way to find me. You can find me in some way. Let me know. First person who proves it, we'll go ahead and give them a call.
Easy. And easiest probably way to do that, probably through Twitter. You can find AJ. He's not the only one who tweets from it. You can find him predominantly at Heel Illustrated on
Make
Twitter.
part of the challenge here, getting them to find me.
Yeah, about to say, if you can find AJ too. I've given you all a little cheat code with the Twitter, but you get creative with how you contact him. Yeah,
just Facebook. You know what? If you follow my wife, she tags me in everything, and she puts up 60 posts a day. Oh, our daughter woke up. Let's do a post. My wife's rather prolific, so anybody who follows me on Facebook, I don't post much, but my wife does. So they're like, oh, hey, AJ must be here. AJ must know.
Yeah, they learn from her, right?
I'm not there. They're in Nashville visiting family, and I'm here, and all that kind of stuff. So
exactly.
You guys can find me. It'll be really easy, but that'll be part of the challenge.
Yeah, part of the challenge as well. So definitely see if you can get creative with it. See if you can prove to us that you listen to us in the car. We'd love to see that free comp. Doesn't get any better than that. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. You guys know the drill. As always, like, share, and turn that notification bell on as well, so every time we upload. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Even tell a friend to subscribe to our channel if they're a Carolina fan. Check us out. We upload a ton of content on a weekly basis. And as always, guys, see you in the next one. Thanks.